So I know you guys have played all across the country and even other parts of the world. Being here at this podcast, does it feel like now you've finally made it?
Oh, yes. And that we are very nervous about this. This is the big time.
Well, now we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, you are.
I wasn't until then, but
Right,
no,
right, yeah.
So this is kind of a special episode. So we're coming from Mineral Area College, about an hour south of St. Louis. We've got Steve Wiest, Chip McNeill, Frank Greene, three amazing musicians, and the mediocre Dave Dickey.
Wow.
Man.
Ouch, babe.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
My wife told him to say that.
Brandon the gangster.
Yes.
I'm joking. Dave's been great. Is this the second year for the Dave Dickey Big Band
Yes,
Camp?
second year. I've helped out before at the university with camps, but for a big band camp, the Dave Dickey Big Band Camp, it's their second year. Yep.
And now I'd heard that the size or the number of students has doubled since last year.
Yeah, and we're excited because obviously Farmington, North County students in the area, but we have a girl trumpet who came all the way from Florida who's playing in Steve's band, and we have a piano student from Milwaukee area. We have students coming down from Chicago, Springfield, Columbia, obviously St. Louis. So not only is it great for this community, but it's branched out, all around the country, including the faculty that we're bringing in too.
Yeah. Steve, do you live in Chicago?
I do.
I had heard someone ask you what your favorite hot dog place was.
Oh, it's right now it's a place called Poochie's, right next to an unbelievable bagel place with like 3-foot thick donuts with chocolate. Oh, I'm starting to get hungry.
Little chocolate donuts on your breakfast table.
Yes, it's the very, very important part of this healthy breakfast.
John Belushi, classic.
Yeah.
Love
Yep,
it.
yep. Poochie's.
I'll
Ask
have
for
to-
it by name.
I'll have to think of that next time I'm up there.
All right. Yeah.
Mention our name and you pay full price.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
right.
Steve sent me.
Yes, there you go.
Double
Yeah,
the
charge you
price.
double.
That's right.
Chip, you're at the University of Illinois.
Yes, I'm the chair of jazz studies. I actually started the degree programs there 25 years ago, and have had a lot of students come through the program, both actually at all three levels: the BM, the Bachelor of Music and Jazz Performance, Master of Music and Jazz Performance, and then DMA, which is Doctor of Musical Arts and Jazz Performance. And then when I started it, there was only about maybe 4 or 5 of those in the country. We were one of only 4 or 5, so it's pretty interesting where it's gone. And
Yeah.
I've had a lot of wonderful students, Dave being one of them years ago, and we've had just an amazing time. So I'm doing that, but I'm still not playing. I've been playing the entire time too.
Yeah, cool.
I've been blessed to have Chip as a teacher at Florida International University in Miami. And then after that, he went off to Illinois and Champaign in about 2 years
Yeah.
after he left town, and he convinced me to do a double TA at Illinois with him before Jim Pugh joined. And it was one of my better learning experiences to go to Champaign to be with Chip, because he gave me the opportunity to lead my own big band for the first time.
Thank you, Dave. Here, I'll pay.
Yeah, here's that 20 I owe you.
So I have to apologize to my parents. It's Chip's fault that I'm doing all this stuff.
Man,
He's the bad crowd. They warned Jim out.
that's it.
Frank, are you still in New York?
I think so. Well, no, I'm in St. Louis.
You're in
Oh,
St.
you
Louis?
mean, See, I get confused
You're
easily.
not really even in St. Louis.
Well, near St. Louis. Yes, I still live in New York City.
I saw a video. I'm not somebody who's super claustrophobic, but I saw like a behind the scenes video where you sort of emerge behind the where the orchestra is for the late show, and I was like, those are pretty tight quarters.
Oh, yeah, it was
back
we
there.
were pretty close together in there, especially because Tom Malone had 87 horns.
I saw a bunch
I
of
had
them, yeah.
5 doubles, and I thought that was a lot, and Tom had 87 doubles. So it didn't feel so bad.
Yeah.
So, a lot of your fans and Maynard Ferguson fans probably be angry with me because yours is a world that I'm not familiar with. But I think that's super cool about us as people is there's so many things that you just don't know about. So I did watch a lot of videos on YouTube, and don't take this personally. My favorite thing, not the music, the hairstyles. Oh man,
Yeah.
look
Mullet
at some
band
of those
comes to mind, yeah.
old 70s and early 80s.
Sure.
Oh man,
I've kept
loved it.
mine. It's,
Yeah.
I haven't changed.
Yeah, you-
Still the mullet.
Yeah, just the rebel spirit. Like
Oh, that's it, man.
eventually,
Revolutionaries.
it all comes back in style. Just wait a few
You
decades.
just have to wait a couple of decades.
That's
Gotta
right.
wait.
Well, it's pretty interesting too. There's some videos on there I've seen because I had a lot of when I was a music director. I'd talk to Maynard all the time, every day, and he would often bring up how he had lived in England for quite a while and he played over there. And he was people don't realize he was a big star on what was the version of the Johnny Carson show here, the Tonight Show. He was the Doc Severinsen of that English show, and I don't even remember what the title of it was. But that's how he really kind of got his fame. That was the beginning of it. He kind of started there, and then he came over here, and some of the English guys came with him, and they had like giant fros,
Yeah.
and it was
Right,
like that
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Got the beards and the stash and the
Andy
glasses.
McIntosh was one.
This,
He had
this was
one.
a short haircut, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Right, right.
So the hairstyles, I think, kind of drifted over from England in his band, and they just ended up staying.
It was just super cool to see those guys just grooving and the fashion.
Alan Zavad, remember him? He had
Yes.
the pork chop sideburns.
Don't worry, we'll look like that in 30 years.
Yeah, right.
What were you guys thinking?
So yeah, I think one of the big talking points is you guys have all had experiences working with Maynard Ferguson, and again, just from seeing the videos, you could tell he was having fun. He
Always.
looked, he
Yeah.
was,
Yep.
he was animated, but he was like trying to get the players going and trying, with the audience, and he was just like a conduit.
Well, that's a good description.
Yeah.
Just want to
that's
talk about
very apt.
some of your experiences working with him.
It was, he was, to this day, the most supportive and probably creative band leader I've ever been around. He would support any ideas that you had creatively. You could bring in a new piece of music. My friend Dennis de Blasio and I would come up with comedy routines that had no business being on a show of jazz music. And he'd go, yeah, that's great. Let's try it. It's got to be funny, though.
There was,
Yeah.
there was a
That
thing
was the
called
kicker.
The Jerky Boys was one of the things that was when I was out.
Yeah,
And
I remember
one of
those.
The Egyptian magician part.
The
would
Egypt-
come out,
yes.
And he would say, "Unda du ha."
yeah,
Right,
right.
right.
We do a tune called Brazil on the bridge, and we go da da da. da. We go, and Maynard would go "Unda du," like along with the rest of us. He just would just join in. I saw videos of that. I went, I forgot he used to join in on that. So Steve's right.
Constant routines and stuff.
Looking for
I
fun.
remember I brought a student to a show once, and he did. Maynard, we were talking about this the other day. He would do this bit where he'd put music on the stand. We're going to play a new chart, and he'd talk about the legend is that jazz musicians can't read music. So I really wanted to demonstrate. So he puts on his glasses, and our job was to go. Maynard, boss,
one
you're.
second.
He goes, oh no, it's the right piece. I've got the right thing, and we go on and on and on until eventually he goes, oh. And
It's
turns it
upside
over.
down.
Yeah.
So we were
Classic.
in the audience, and I said to one of the students, I said, "Shtick number 29."
Yeah,
He just
right.
randomly made up. And on stage, after he did that, he looked back and went, "Steve-O, shtick number 29."
Yeah, right.
Whoa, game over, man.
Yeah, one of my favorite things at Maynard when I was a kid, I used to see him. They do like Stella by Starlight.
Oh,
and there would be a
yeah.
break, and he would go. "Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba." He'd take a handkerchief,
Yep.
hold it up,
Yeah.
and let it go. And as soon as it hit the ground, Ed would cue the lights and go bam, and the band would. It was super exciting, but it was shtick,
Yeah,
But
it
it was good
was a
shtick. It
lot
was
of
fun.
shtick.
It comes from the standpoint of pure entertainment and interacting with the audience. And everybody that's what we'll sometimes facetiously, if I could say that word, call it the University of Maynard. Because when you're with Maynard Ferguson, you learn so much stuff about communicating with the audience and the comedy and the seriousness of the music at the same time.
Well, he came out of everybody. A lot of people don't know this. He was a Canadian, and he grew up as a boy band leader. He was opening for Duke Ellington when he was 12, 13 years old.
crazy.
Yeah, and so he saw all these other bands, which all had some kind of shticks going on, whether it was serious or comedic.
Right.
And that was part of his thing. He just adapted that on there, to what he did. And he loved to sing, and he would make fun. And he had an interesting voice. I'll just say it that way.
Yes.
When you first hear him, you're like, wow, I didn't expect that. When you see him and then you put the voice together. And so it was really funny. He loved to sing, and he knew it. But it was that was kind of like, it'll go over. Yeah, wow, I love singing, and
Those
he
are my
did.
favorite songs when he would
Yeah,
sing.
I would.
Yeah.
I
would
me
love
too.
them.
My
Yeah.
favorite
Charts would be
chart I
good.
ever wrote for him was a old tune that he used to sing. That's My
That's
Desire.
My Desire. I used to love doing that.
That chart was my favorite chart of all the charts I wrote for him that were instrumental. That was a vocal
He
chart.
would sing, "That's my desire."
He loved it. 'Cause it was- yeah. Well, he kind of dedicated it to his wife, Florence Flo, and it was really great. And she loved it, when she would come out and check it out, because that was one he did
That was a good
way
one.
back.
That was a really good one.
Being a young boy. I think a lot of the
Can't Get
comedic
Started.
stuff
Yeah, it
comes
was so
from.
good.
Yeah.
He was part of that entertainment. Enough of the vaudeville still survived,
Right.
Did
Right,
he sing
he
But
knew a lot
Beautiful,
of
or is
those
that?
guys.
Did he
No.
sing But?
No,
That was
I
just
don't think
about.
so. That was
Wish he
Christmas
sang
chart.
that. Wish he sang that. Would have been good.
I recently saw a social media post that was like, "Be like the Muppets." Fozzie wasn't that funny. Kermit really couldn't sing that well.
Right.
But they did it anyway because they were having fun and they
Right.
did their best.
Well,
And
see, Fozzie had a hook. He could say any joke that
And then
was
it-
stupid. He go waka waka,
Right.
waka
Yeah,
waka.
he did
Who's
have
not
a-
going to laugh after that? Maynard had a couple of hooks too.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
well, yeah, if you
Yeah,
grow
so-
from that young of an age to
Yeah.
be part of that, such a famous, you're going to pick up on so much.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But I agree with Steve. One of the most creative and open band leaders that I ever worked for, certainly, if not the most. He was right up there. Always super supportive. He was just fun. From the minute you met him, and I don't know, I was just lucky. I think all of us were. He liked all of us, immediately, and you could just tell right away. And it was going to be there's going to be some fun stuff happening every night, because you're out there. We're on the road all the time, and we were playing, and you're playing a lot of the same music, and then we'd write and change it, and he'd change the show, but it was kind of gradual. And when you do that, it can get stale, as we all know. We try to do our best to be creative with it, but he was kind of the spark of all that.
Always.
Yeah, and that's what's so fun for us.
Because the crazy part, it was for my chair. It was hard work. I'm not gonna lie, it was hard work, but it was fun hard work. But the next morning you try to warm up, and you spend the first 20 minutes going.
Billy? Little birds
And
coming out.
you don't make a sound. You go get a coffee and come back. Then 20 minutes later you get.
Wow.
So you pay your dues because your lip turns like leather after a while. But
Right.
but once
Cut
you get
me,
rolling,
coach.
after the first 45
Send me
minutes,
in.
you could actually play your second tone of the day. But you paid the dues that way. But it was pretty fun.
I think it was interesting, too. Brass players all have a different view of it because, obviously, that was his main thing. But he played a variety of brass instruments, too. But he also played saxophone. His brother was an oboe player and a saxophone player, and he learned to play saxophone. So for me, it was a completely different thing. Saxophone to him, he kept it as kind of the, what's the right word? But like almost a comical
It's a
instrument.
comedic tool.
Yeah. And he would play once in a while. We were just talking about it. He would play soprano. We used to play dual sopranos, and it was hilarious, having him play saxophone. And he knew it. He enjoyed it. It was fun, but it was not like his main thing. But he just did it because he did it from being a young man. He'd been doing it all his life.
Sorry, go ahead.
Who brought the Superbone to Maynard?
Ooh,
I don't know. I think that was Holton's idea.
think, it was
just so he
came
didn't have
from
to have
Holton.
a valve trombone and a baritone.
Right.
He used to carry all that stuff.
did, yeah.
And then he wanted to kind of combine them, the little slide with the Firebird thing, the slide.
remember those
trumpet.
days when Maynard would put out 95 horns and
Yeah.
just play his B flat the whole time?
Right.
Yeah. Why are you guys doing that?
It's like the old Andy Kaufman routine.
So are we on? Is this video as well as audio?
Unfortunately, yeah.
I would have put on a different wig if I knew that.
Right.
No, well, the reason I say that is the Superbone has valves in the left hand and the slide like this. And so he wanted myself and Chris Brayman, who was the other trombonist when I was out, to play it. And I had no valve tech, no chops at all. And they're big, ungainly, heavy
it's
instruments.
bulky, yeah.
So Maynard and I had this shtick that we would do where I would go, and he'd go,
Yeah, right. Use the slide.
everything was shtick. Everything
Yeah.
was funny comedy. But the music had to always be amazingly together.
yeah.
It had to have a presentation that was great for the audience, always.
Yeah.
You were talking about sort of some lighthearted. I've been going around to some of the classes to get some video to help promote the camp again for next year. And one of the sessions I was in, a student asked, it eventually led to discussion of 1930s cartoon music.
We were talking about
That
it, yeah.
sort of found its way into
Yeah, it was in the
jazz
improv
and-
class. We were talking. Andy and Martin and I were talking about it. Yeah, because he was talking about Gordon Goodwin, one of his former employers, and Gordon has the Big Fat Band. And Gordon grew up kind of studying a lot of the famous cartoon writers, Gene Stallings and all these different people years ago that wrote all this amazing cartoon music. And it was difficult. And we were talking about how technology now, they just sync it up with the tone, and it's totally different how they do it now. But back then they had old moviola machines, and you had to do timings and write all that. I learned how to do that years ago, but it's all obsolete now. And so, and the conductors, he was talking about conductors, and that's why we got into the cartoon music, because that music was really difficult to play, and conduct too.
There's a CD of those recording sessions.
Yeah, right.
Stallings recording sessions for those cartoons.
Right.
And it just sounds like chaos. And then they'd stop and go, oboe, a little bit louder at letter B. And they go, wow, that was perfect.
Yeah. right.
What? Was there an oboe even in that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But that's how we were talking about it, yeah. That's how that came up.
Well, yeah, and not only for the performers who are doing the same thing, you're on the road, you got to keep it fresh for yourselves.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just feeds into that connection with the audience and the performance.
Well, and then you have, so there's at most a 2-hour show at night was the routine. Then so there's the rest of the day to be entertained. And so that can cause a lot of problems and danger and trouble. But mostly it's like if you've ever seen Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee.
Yeah.
That's what it was like, except it's musicians.
Right.
It was this walking down
On
the
the
street.
bus.
On the bus.
Walking on the street.
Every place was props for comedy, and it was great. I mean, it was constant creativity. So that was fun.
He used to, I'll never forget, we played a place called Demetriou's Jazz Alley. You can use that as a plug, Demetriou's. Please send the check to me. Demetriou's Jazz Alley in Seattle. We've all played there before. And it's still going. It's a really nice jazz club. And we would play there for like a week. And they had a condo out that was away from the club was downtown in Seattle, and band just stayed in the hotel, most of the guys. And then there was a condo that they would let the artists stay in. So Maynard would stay out there, and there was about 2 or 3 other rooms that other people could stay in. So I was the MD, so I got to stay out there with him every time we went. And I was hanging. I remember one night we got done, and we were out all night. After the gig, it was real late, and we got done about 2, and we were just out, finding comedic routines.
Yes, there are
later
many.
in the evening, as it were, or early in the morning. And I had just gotten back to the condo somehow, and Maine calls me up at like 7:30. I literally had just laid down in my bed, and I was dead. And he's like, wow, are you awake?
I am now.
Or I am. And we'd go up, and he'd always have a special bottle. I remember him meeting me at the door, and he had his robe on. Maynard always had a robe on,
Yep.
and his little hands, kind of skinny legs. And he'd open the door, and he was always happy to see you. And it was a really pretty nice condo. There was a piano in there, and it was like, he looked like Lionel Barrymore,
But usually with cowboy boots
yeah,
on.
with cowboy boots on.
Right, yeah.
And he came in and he goes, I've got a bottle of cognac. Do you think you can help me drink it? And it's literally like 7:30 in the morning. And of course we did what he said. Sure, boss. And I'm I'm pretty tired. We proceeded to do that and made the gig that night, and I'll never forget that one. That was fun. We talked all day. He wanted to hang. But it was fun. It was just, he was a fun guy to be around.
And it always felt like family. It was
Yeah,
always,
it felt
always
like
a
family.
family. And even when you left the band, you could still come back, sit in, write music for it. And a lot of us came back in right at the end of his career.
Exactly.
And it just, you're coming back in mid-paragraph, from where you were before.
I played lead trumpet with the Dizzy Gillespie alumni, and we were traveling in Europe for about 3 weeks, maybe almost 4 weeks, and the guys were all talking about, what are you going to do when you get back? I said, I'm going to go drop my stuff off and go to the Blue Note and hear Maynard. They're like, you're going to make your wife cook here Maynard after you've been away for a month? I went, at his age, you don't know when his last concert would be.
Yeah.
We went
Good
to his
point.
last concert.
That was the last
Oh,
one.
right. At the
Yeah.
Blue Note.
The last series of concerts.
That's we were playing,
Yeah,
right?
we were. That
That's
was the
right.
last.
So I said all
It
my
was
friends
2
were
and
there,
2.
and
We did a
you never
couple
know when
weeks,
his last
right?
one. So my wife got to meet him, and he died pretty shortly.
Yeah.
That, you know what, I remember that particular engagement.
Great.
Because
Gizzy and I went there.
Yeah, we came back and
2006.
we did
We
like
were on tour with the
did
Dizzy
a couple of
Gillespie.
weeks there, and that to me, because he'd had some hard stuff going, and Flo had passed away, his wife, and had gone through some stuff,
Around that same time.
and he which a normal person would obviously be hard to deal with. however he dealt with it, there was just that mechanism. He brightened up the minute we were on the bandstand.
Right.
He loved
Yep.
everybody on that band. He loved playing there. And that 2 weeks, I think I said to you and several other people, you know,
Yeah.
Denny for sure, I said, man, he sounds great.
He was,
You know,
right at the
he
end,
was
he
on.
was killing it.
It was like,
Every solo.
every solo was.
And we would come
Like-
out for
Yeah.
the solos, and he had a week or two earlier he had hurt his ankle,
Right.
so he had a stool out there and was
Right.
sitting and had like this big Hawaiian shirt on.
It was awesome, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and he's sitting in the chair, and usually we had this wonderful routine where you would go out for a solo and shake hands,
Yeah.
and then afterwards do a little namaste thing, you know, and it was a beautiful thing to have a solo next to Maynard. But at this last series of concerts, he's sitting on the stool. We actually went out and gave him a hug
Give a hug.
before every
Oh,
solo.
yeah.
It was just
I
grab
remember
onto him and hug.
Yeah.
And he was, yeah, man, go play now, yeah.
But Maynard was
loved
like
it.
hugging a tree. He was pretty.
Oh, yeah.
He's bulky
Yeah,
guy.
he had
Bulky.
some strength for sure.
But it was
no.
nobody knew that he was on the way out. I don't think.
Well,
maybe
I did,
even.
and I'll tell you
did?
why.
Oh.
Because my wife went with me, and so she said, "Can I meet Maynard?" It's like, well, I think we can probably work that out. So the cool thing about being on the band is that it's almost like we had the TSA line.
Yeah,
so
sure.
the line would be like 50 people waiting to meet Maynard. Ed would go whoop right past everybody and bring you right into the room. So my wife is English, and so he started talking to my wife about when he was in England. But he held her hand for about a minute. And I went, that's not good. That's not a good thing. She went, why? He's just being nice. I
could
said,
sense it.
you don't know him.
Yeah.
Because with Maynard, if you remember, when you met him, he would say hi, but you never really had more than about 20 seconds with Maynard before he was off thinking about something else or doing something else. He was always in motion.
Yeah.
When he held her hand for a whole minute and was listening to her intently, I thought, yeah, that's what old people do when they
Yeah, sure.
before they pass away, they start holding on to you.
yeah.
He was doing that, and I said,
Tactile.
It's not going to be long. And she goes, I think you're being negative. And then ironically, we were playing at the Hollywood Bowl with the Dizzy Band.
Yeah.
And we came off stage, and Wayne Bergeron was on the side of the stage. He goes, the band sounded great. Maynard passed away just 10 minutes ago. I was like,
Very soon
we were
after.
at the Hollywood
Yeah.
Bowl. It was not far from where Maynard was. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe a half hour, 20-minute drive. So we could have maybe seen him, but if he'd
we,
slipped
and we
along.
finished that show and then went and recorded his last album.
At Bennett Studios.
yeah,
Yeah, and he
yes, I
sounded
remember that.
Tony
great
Bennett's
on
son.
the album.
Yep.
Did you hear from Christian, who should be here, Christian Jacob, to tell this story, but he wrote it down, how he actually passed away is, right before he passes away, and this is a true story. It's amazing. You would think if this was a movie, you would say, no, we can't accept this screenplay.
No one will
It's-
believe it. Yeah.
No, nobody's going to believe this. So in Ojai, California, where his family was, somebody owned a cat, and the cat passed away. And in typical Maynard fashion, they had a funeral for the cat and a procession down to the grave, and he's saying some Hindu prayers and various things. And then he gets his horn out of the case and plays taps for the cat. Put the horn in the case, and that was the last thing he ever played was taps.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
like,
For a cat.
wow. For a cat.
For a cat, that makes
Which-
that tracks.
Is
Yep.
actually
Yeah.
totally apropos for him. It would be cool.
It is.
He would be cool with that. That it's like full circle because I just could see the kid in him all the way to
Yep.
the end, And it's like that's probably how he started playing taps for people or whatever, as a kid.
Always-
and I'll never
always
forget
positive.
when we
Yeah.
left that thing. We were flying back, and Maynard and I ended up getting a ride to the airport in Newark. And I remember sitting with him. It was just he and I. Everybody else was probably gone. And we're sitting there. I'm waiting for my flight to Chicago, and he's going back to L.A. and Ojai. And we were going to go out and do a tour like maybe
right,
2 or
that
3
was
weeks
coming up.
later.
Yep.
That last record, he didn't know, but it was the new record. And he wanted us to come back. I was like, sure, I can figure out school, because school was about to start for me. And I was like, yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll be there no matter what. I'll be there.
He
We'll
was
go out.
excited about that.
Oh, he was
Yeah.
excited about it,
Yep.
and he his flight got called, and he got up, and I said, "I'll see you in a month, man." And that was the last time I saw him.
That was it.
That was the last time I got talked
I
to.
was already writing some music. I was writing up Nessun Dorma. I was
Yeah,
gonna
right,
do that.
right.
for that,
There you go.
Like I could hear him doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been
we're
great.
Little thing from an opera.
Yeah.
What's the name of it? Turandot. Oh yeah.
That would have been fun. That would have been great fun.
Well,
But
as an outsider, I'm glad that you got to see him in a performance as your sort of last
Well,
main memory.
And he sounded great
Yeah,
in
he
his
sounded
last
great.
performance.
I always
Just-
think of it as he went out the way he wanted to with his boots
Yeah.
on.
Right.
He literally played some of the best stuff I ever heard the whole time I was on the band those last couple of weeks
Right.
of him. He was strong, and like you say, maybe he knew, whatever.
Yeah.
But he was
Or you
he
could
was
sense
on.
it.
He was going to go
Could
out.
feel it. Yeah.
strong.
I always imagined he would pass away by just playing a double C and blowing up on stage.
Vapor, yeah.
It was pretty close.
It was close to that. Yeah, he went out playing.
Yeah.
He sounded good because my friend that went with me, he said, "I'm not sure which is more fun, watching Maynard or watching you watch Maynard."
Yeah.
He just play like it. I go, "Yeah." My friend's like, "What are you doing?" It's like, just let me be.
Yeah, right.
Just let me do it. Yeah.
It's a thing where an artist like that, we played a thing over in Japan, was part of the Newport Jazz Festivals that were in different countries, and one of the great quartets were there. So it was Freddie Hubbard and McCoy Tyner and Eddie Gomez and Al Foster. And it was, gosh, just watching those guys. And we were way out away from anything else, and nobody spoke English except us. So those guys had to hang out with us, kids, on Maynard's band. So we got to know them. But I remember poor McCoy Tyner, the piano player, used to play with John Coltrane. So we were all saying, "McCoy, man, what did Coltrane have for breakfast? And what did Coltrane wear when he did?" We did all these Coltrane fanboy questions. And at one point I went up to McCoy and said, "Man, I'm sorry we're bugging you about all this Coltrane." He goes, "No, are you kidding? I'm just glad somebody's still interested in the music."
Yeah, sure.
And, that's the same thing with Maynard. It's wonderful that people would still be interested in the legacy of his music.
I've talked with you guys so much about Maynard, especially Chip and you, Steve, but I don't think I've talked with you guys like how you guys got in the band. So sometimes you hear people that know somebody in the band, or they talk with Ed Sargent, or word of mouth. So why don't you guys share how you guys got in the band in your first time? Like you mentioned earlier, first time you meet Maynard, it's like you've buddies already.
Instant friend.
So talk about whether it's an audition or
When we go around the table, everybody's always different. So with me, I had come from a very small environment in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, so it wasn't connected to the big time at all. So I moved up to Chicago, and my cousin lived up there, a trumpet player named Nick Drozdoff. He still lives there. And he had worked very hard to meet the right people to get on Maynard's band. So that was my in. And he recommended me. And in fact, half the band quit at one point, and they were going to start their tour in Chicago. So I was, oh man! So he calls me up, and I had this really lame tape that I'd put together. That's a whole nother story. But I had the tape, and I sent it in, and the top call guy, a guy named Scott Bentall in Chicago, they asked him first, and he had a good steady gig, so he turned it down. They're like, "Oh, we need somebody. Who we're gonna get?" And "Oh, look, this cassette on top of the stack. Let's try this guy."
That's
What?
unusual, though.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think they at that time it was before Ed was the manager, Ed Sargent. So they said, "Does anybody know this guy?"
81?
It was 81 when I came on. Said, who is this guy? This Steve Wiest. Or probably said Steve Wiest. And I said, "Oh, that's Drozdoff's guy." Didn't even know I was his cousin. So because of Nick's recommendation, that's how I came on. And I remember the Hyatt, right, or whatever it is, right next to the Blackstone. Right. He waited on the fire escape outside. We were going to rehearse inside, so I'm going up the stairs of the fire escape, and there's Maynard at the door shaking people's hands as they come in, and I'm going, "I'm about to meet him. I'm about to meet him. I'm going to join the band." He goes, "Hey, who are you?"
Right. Exactly.
"Hi, Mr. Ferguson. My name's Steve." "Come on in, Steve-O. Yeah, how are you doing?" And it was big fun. Hey. Whoa! That's what it was. So that was me. And let's go around.
Well, I guess it wasn't quite like that. For me, I was on the Woody Herman band at the time, and so I was kind of out at the end of Woody's tenure with the band, and he passed away, and I stayed another year or so. So we had run into Maynard several times, and of course I knew who he was, and I'd heard the band when I was younger. So I don't know if he heard me then, but whatever, I was out with the band, and then a guy on Woody's band who was a bass trombone player, Joe Barati, was a good friend of
we were together on Maynard's band.
Yeah, and so Joe had been on Woody's band, and he had left the band a little before me, Woody's band, and he called me up one day, and he just said, "Hey, Maynard's doing a tour to Europe for like 3 months, and he needs somebody that can, play saxophone and write." And that's how Joe, because I had written some stuff for Woody's band and blah, blah, he knew me that I could write. So I said, well, okay. And it was in between, and I was about to leave Woody's band. So I split, and then I just met them. And how I met them, they were going to rehearse out in Ojai in California.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
they flew me out to Ojai, and this is a funny story. I think it was Bruce Galloway and somebody else. I don't know if it was Exxon or whatever, Jim Exxon, but they pull up with the van, and Walter White's in there, a bunch of them, and it's like Cheech and Chong. There's like smoke coming out of the windows, and the van door opens, and they just grab me and pull me in at the airport. And I'm like, what? And would take me up to. I flew into LAX, and they took me up to Ojai, and then I met Maynard at the first rehearsal that we had there in some little place. And it was the same thing, just super friendly right out there.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, nice to meet you. All right. And I said, I'm Chip McNeill. Oh, great. I heard, blah, blah, blah about you. And I'm glad to have you, blah, blah, blah. And then off we went, and
Yeah.
that was the end of it. And
Friends
as far
forever.
As, yeah,
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
like, that was it, And that's how I came on the band, and then we toured a bunch. And it was a little different configuration, like with Steve. There was only, it was a small band. It was called the Big Bop Nouveau. He always changed configurations. And it was basically just like 2 saxophones and a trombone and 2 or 3 trumpets and a rhythm section. And so that was kind of what I did. And he needed somebody that could write a lot of
Yeah, it was
charts
heading into the 90s. Yeah.
for a kind of to simulate a bigger band, and that was my job. That's kind of what I was doing. And then we went to Europe, and we were at Ronnie Scott's club, which is a very famous club in Soho in London, and we were there for like 3 weeks. And I wrote a bunch of stuff, and I'll never forget that tour. That's when I really got to know Maynard, and when he wanted me to be the music director. But because I wrote, he wanted some charts, some new stuff. We were recording. We recorded every night, and that was the Live in London.
Oh, right.
It was basically they recorded 3 weeks worth, and some of it got ruined somehow. But anyway, we saved some of it. And anyway, we were playing, and the air conditioning had gone out, and it was the hottest record in London, hottest summer in London on record
right,
since like the 1800s or something. And it was just, Ronnie Scott's is like down in a hole. It's like a basement. And it was so hot. And we had white. With the band wore white pants and white T-shirts. The ice cream
tour,
uniforms.
yes.
Yeah, all of us have had those variants of those.
Yep.
And within like 5 minutes, everybody looked like somebody just thrown a bucket of water on them. And Maynard, of course, had a nice shirt. And he just totally sweated out too. But we got to know each other and hung out. A lot of hanging afterwards, and I brought some things in, and right away, again, let's just goes back to his supporting. He loved it, and it was like, yeah, you're going to be the music director. And that was that.
Okay.
And that was kind of a nice day. I ended up staying for, 7 or 8 years, and 7 or 8 recordings later. So that was it for me.
Yeah, because it was fun playing on the band with you. Cause
That was a
after
blast.
going to college with you. It's like,
Well, yeah, Frank
felt
and I,
very comfortable.
we went to school at a place called North Texas State, and so did Steve,
Yeah.
at different times. But Frank and I was there.
Right.
He was there kind of the last year and a half we were talking about last night, a year and a half or 2 that I was there.
North Texas.
So I knew Frank, and there was an opening at a point on the band because it was only trumpets. I said, get Frank.
I got a guy.
Great,
Yeah.
yeah, Frank was great.
He'll be the best guy in this chair at this price.
Yeah.
I know Keith Oshiro said he was involved in that
Yeah,
thing as well.
Keith
He
was
said-
on the band. Right,
He
he
said
was on that.
because Maynard
Great
went up to him and said,
trombonist, Keith
Chip,
Oshiro,
people
yeah.
recommend it. So I'm going to put so I recommend him too. He said, look, if you don't like him, you can fire me. Of course, Keith was. And so I was thankful people would say that, but I joined the band in Fort Wayne, Indiana. As I get older, everything morphs together. I know when I got on Woody Herman's band, there was a hotel with a balcony. I couldn't tell you the town. I couldn't even really tell you the year.
Yeah.
It's
Right,
like so.
right.
Like people. When did you join Christian McBride's band?
Yeah, I know. It all blends together.
1917. Wait. Anyway, so but I remember that because Craig Johnson is from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Oh, okay.
So I remember we didn't rehearse everything. We rehearsed the hit medley and things that were more involved. But we did a tune called Brazil. I'm just going to play lead trumpet, right? As far as I'm concerned, you play lead and there's a guy that plays some jazz, right? Or so you can split. That's kind of how it was in
That's
college
how it
for
was.
sure.
That was a chart I wrote for the band. He wanted.
And that's
to
kind of how it was
Brazil.
at most bands. Like, Woody's band, the lead guys didn't blow on anything. It was usually had 2 lead guys and 2 jazz guys, right? Lead guys never blew on anything. He never expected to. And like Ron Stout would never be asked to play a high note solo, right? Or play lead, right?
Yeah.
So it was divvied up that way. So I'm thinking, I'm just going to focus on having endurance, try to play the best I can, and I get fired my first day. So I see Maynard go, doing the finger. I thought, oh, is he gonna? Am I fired already? So I'll back up. So okay. Well, I'll tell you this part first. So we get there. We do a tune called Brazil, right? Now you can kind of dance around the key center for the first part, but not on the bridge. because it goes E to F, E to F, E to F. So there's no key. You got to play something. And I'm not a jazz improviser because at North Texas, if you either played lead or you played jazz or you played classical trumpet, because there's so many guys. If you try to play both, there's always a classical guy that played better than you. They just hired that guy, or always a lead player that played better than you. So you kind of had to focus. And so we were more focused that way back in the day. It's not so much that way now, but for sure, if you're going to play lead with Buddy, you're probably not going to be playing jazz. And so so he says, so what part does he give me? He gives me that part. And I went, uh-oh. And he winked at me. Like that's why I gave it to you. And so I had to come up with something. I mean, so I asked the piano player, Chip, I said, you guys got to write me something. You got to write something. So I think I made up like a couple different things, and I played those every time. Because also the headspace to blow and then go back and play that book, you needed to kind of be in one or the other. So anyway, but that was kind of how it was. It's like, here's the bus. I'm going to throw you under it. And so anyway, so we get through that first rehearsal and the first gig. My thought was, I called my dad. I said, look, if I never do another gig, I got to play with my hero.
Oh, there you go.
I was so excited because I was like, pretty cool. How's it going? It's good. Went in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Dance,
the next morning we're at the hotel and we get on the bus, right? And I walk in with just like jeans and a t-shirt, and I'm wearing a white Sabian cap. You know the drum company, the cymbal company.
Yeah.
Only problem is that band was a Zildjian band. And that was a huge rivalry between the brothers, between the Sabian. And so Maynard walks out, he goes, nice cap. and my first words to him is, am I fired already? He goes, no. And so fast forward, I gave him the cap to give the guys at Zildjian, and I got like a leather tour jacket, 4 or 5 shirts, a whole bunch of, I think I got a tote bag from Zildjian just for giving him that Sabian cap so he could burn it.
How about that?
Yeah, see, it came out pretty good. But yeah, it was pretty fun. He was fairly nice to me. And he was only mean because he'd make me do things I didn't want to have to do. But otherwise, it was great fun.
Well, he's a trumpet player and one of the world's most famous trumpet players. And so trumpet players always got put under the microscope in a different way than the rhythm section or the saxophone players or the trombone players. It just was different. And that's why whenever you came on, I was like, no. I always tried to hire guys I knew were like, yeah, Frank's going to be great. He's going to love you. Don't worry. So
it was fun.
I didn't know that, though, that he did that.
Yeah.
He did that too.
It's John Owens who could have, Jesse goes, Maynard wants you down there. It's like, he doesn't know, he think he wants you down there.
He would have these little secret things. The band would have these secret things because it was like a family. Sure. And so when you come on as a new person, you don't necessarily know some of this stuff. So I remember one of the first tours, he was doing what I came to call later as the MF sandwich, the Maynard Ferguson sandwich. And I had no idea what this thing was. And we're on stage, and he goes, gentlemen. And he looks hitting his glasses like this. He's like, what is this? And everybody's like, oh, okay. All right, here we go. What is that? And we're like, and he goes, and everybody played a note. I was like, what was that? It was just this huge cluster of notes. He goes, okay, and it was this massive, this kind of atonal riff that he would come up with, and he would put it at randomly in a chart just to kind of stretch things and do something different. And one of the things I wrote, he comes up one time, okay, gentlemen, ready? And I'm like, oh, you're putting a sandwich on my chart. So, and afterwards, somebody came and said, man, I love that chart, especially that voicing in the middle. What was that? I said, oh, yeah, that's the sandwich. Sorry.
Yeah, Maynard, he had his things. We would be driving down the road, and he loves Gaylord's Indian food place in Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
And so you might say, boss, my entire family is being held hostage in Sarajevo. It'd be really good if I can just pull over and call them on a cell phone just to make sure. Nope, can't do it. We're on a schedule. But if we were near Chicago, we'd go 4 hours out of the way to get Indian food. So he had his priorities.
And stay there for 8.
Yeah, right. So.
Right.
Everybody ate.
But if you're near Chicago, it's like, this just became a 9-hour bus ride.
Well, I did speaking of Gaylord's and Indian food, and which he loved, I did a tour with him when we went to India. We actually went over to see his guru person, which was Sri Satya Sai Baba.
Yep.
And we went to the south of India. We flew into we were in Europe somewhere for a few months, and then we just flew on over to India. And
With
went
the
down.
white suits?
Yeah, with the white suits. We had, what do you call
guys
it?
had the white suits on?
Dress. The thing that's
male saris or whatever.
Yeah, saris.
Oh, right,
We
yeah.
had saris. He bought us all saris
What an
while
apt,
we were
what an
there.
apt name, right?
Yeah, he took us to a place, and we were gonna wear them. We wore. I've got pictures.
I
Somewhere
saw the pictures. They're so
of
good.
Dan Miller and a sari, and there's people. Yeah, we're all there standing there, and so we were in India for I don't know, a couple of weeks. We were at the ashram that this guy Sri Satya Sai Baba lived at, and Flo flew over.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, and she came over, and she was there with him, and we were sitting. That was a big deal for Maynard and Flo to sit on the porch with Sri Satya Sai Baba was a big deal. So we were all sitting on the porch with him there, and he was starting to talk about stuff, and I just can never forget. As interesting as Maynard had kind of an interesting voice. Sri Satya Sai Baba's voice was like that times 100 million. It was the first, and he was about this tall too, and he had a giant fro.
Yeah, right.
He was just the most interesting guy I'd ever seen in my life, and I'll never forget. And Maynard was just loving every minute of it being there because
that was his guy.
Oh, that was his guy.
Yep.
Matt talking about materializing things. You just shake the crap out of his sleeves, and look,
And then presto changeo.
A person got stuck behind his sleeve and went like this. You go, your ring. It's like,
Some cat said they went to an Indian restaurant or something, and they told the waiter, said, "Oh, well, you might know our boss is affiliated with a wonderful religious figure in your country." And he goes, "Oh, who is this?" And they said, "Satya Sai Baba is tourist religion." And I said,
yeah.
Whoa!
Weak.
Yeah, but it was interesting. There was a lot of other things that happened on that trip that I probably can't say
remember we
here,
went-
but they were interesting.
Right.
One of the guys got dysentery, and we were getting
Immediately you get that, right?
Yeah, and going back when we got on the plane, it was like we were just like, oh God, I hope he lives. And he did, but it was
None of
interesting.
that happened on my tours.
Yeah.
I was in charge of the Bible reading sessions and
Yeah.
purchasing the milk
Community
and the
service.
cookies.
Yeah,
Steve,
Yeah,
did you
no,
keep
Ricky.
everybody in line?
I did, yes, of cookies.
The straight and narrow.
Yes,
Wiest world where
that's right, where Corinthians is read.
certain things don't
Corinthians is
live.
right.
Nothing lives past this line.
Nope, abandon hope, all ye who enter.
I did want to touch on two things, but first, Dave, did you want to talk about your experiences with Maynard?
I was not a musician in his band, but my experience is, I knew of so many guys in the band, and I kind of almost had a chance when I was in Miami. I think maybe DeBanowitz might have been MD at that
Oh
time.
yeah, that was.
But
after me.
it
I was
just
long
didn't
gone.
work out. Then Maggie and I got engaged, and that was a time.
Right.
I think Raul was the second to last trombonist, and after him. So it just
Reggie, I went back.
Yeah, Reg- so he was
couple
after
times when I
Reggie.
was with Arturo, I came back out, and there's a good picture of Maynard. Maynard was playing in Boston, and so were we. We were at Scullers with Arturo, and Mayn and Arturo Sandoval got along great. Mayn loved him, and Arturo worshipped Maynard. So we're out there and we're playing, and I ended up playing with Maynard's band and with Arturo in the same 2 weeks. And there's a good picture of one pulling one arm of me, and the other pulling the other arm of me.
Oh, that's
I
great.
have it somewhere. Maynard loved that
cool.
picture. Yeah.
So for me, like a lot of people, middle school, that got me into jazz music, was hearing Chameleon, hearing, it's like that album. So like if you're a middle school kid, like today, a lot of kids are influenced by like Gordon Goodwin's Big Fat Band. They're hearing Wayne Bergeron, Andy Martin, who's at our camp here now at Mineral Area College. But I'm in, West Des Moines, Iowa, and then my band director, maybe Dave Cunningham or somebody gave me that recording of Maynard. And the La Fiesta was on there, and all those greats on there. And that got me excited because, I love Basie now, but like that's the gateway. That got me into, you can't hear a Coltrane or JJ at first, but then after hearing Maynard, getting me excited about, hearing.
He's like a gateway musical drug.
Yeah,
Indeed,
exactly.
He
Great
brought a lot of
way to
people
put it.
into jazz. Yeah.
So that was a big influence. Yeah, hearing that. And then seeing him live, I remember I went with my high school friends in '91. Yeah, 91, we went from Des Moines to Omaha, Orpheum Theater, I think it was called. And you were
the
playing,
Orpheum. We
you
played
and
there.
Joe Jackson, Hollywood,
Oh,
Holstead on trumpet. And Remember
Yeah,
you called him
Pete was on the band,
Holly
right?
called him
Pete
Holly.
Olsen,
Yeah.
Hollywood Olsen.
This brings up a point that the long list of people who have been
Yeah.
on Maynard's band, goes all the way back.
Oh
to
man,
the
you're
late
talking about
50s.
Chick Corea, Wayne
Yep.
Shorter.
Wow,
Yep.
yeah.
Lots of very, very famous people from it goes back to the late 50s.
Yes,
Yep.
so, and then every instrument, hey, you can
Yeah.
look and see who was on the band. Slide Hampton was trombonist. and a long lineage, indeed.
Yes, long lineage of great writers and players.
Yes,
too.
so many great writers.
So many great writers. And I think if they were all here from I can't think of his name
Micah
now. Well,
Benny or-
Slide, Micah Benny.
Yeah.
The one that wrote the A Train. I can't think of his name.
Sebesky.
Don Sebesky.
Yeah, yeah.
He had so many. I talked to Steve and Frank about this. I would go to his house often in Ojai, and there was a couple times I went out there, and out by his swimming pool, there were these two long boxes, and Steve knows this story well.
Yeah.
There's two long blue boxes with just like wooden lids on them. They weren't sealed or anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are those? He goes, oh, come here. And he opens them up, and he just opens them up, and they're all kind of tattered and wet because the pool had splattered to rain,
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, that's the library. There were all these charts
Outside.
from all these great
Oh, my
writers
gosh.
sitting outside in the weather. And he goes, yeah, someday I'd like to have you, fix those up so we can use some of them. And I'm just like piecing through these pencil,
Right,
from
right.
Slide and Sebesky and Marty Page and all these great writers.
And then we can fast forward a little bit. That library, I knew about this. I had talked with Chip about that, and I'd seen some of the charts and knew of the legend of the library that's sitting in his backyard.
in your
These
backyard,
historic pieces, handwritten.
Right.
This was before computer notation, so
Yes.
it's all written by hand by these great artists.
Yeah.
And so at that time, I was teaching at North Texas, and I was running the 1 o'clock band. So I said, look, we need to see if we can get this music and bring it here, put it in the library, and preserve it correctly. And after a long summer of negotiations, we finally got it done with the help of some donors and things. And so now the whole library is in the music library at North Texas, and it's climate controlled and everything and cataloged. So it eventually was saved.
Was safe, thank
Yeah,
God.
but-
because I told him, I said, Maine. I just pointed at it, kind of laughed, and he said, "Yeah, I know." And I think let's go back
Right.
inside and have some,
Yeah, that would be,
some
that'd be
Indian
like
food.
opening a suitcase and saying, "This thing here, we
Yeah.
call that the Declaration of
Yeah,
Independence."
right.
It's like you're just sitting right there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But we were playing at that little amphitheater in Ojai with
Yeah.
Maria Schneider's
Oh,
band.
right, yeah.
And a couple guys, I said, Maynard's house is right near here. They were like, what? Yeah. So we piled into the car, and Gizzy was like terrified to walk out of the car. He's like, but look, just walk out, and if it's not cool, they'll say it's uncool because you had to drive up the drive.
You had to
It's
drive up the
circular.
drive, sure.
Yeah.
And
The driveway.
And so he was going. It's like, dude, it's cool. They don't have machine guns. Not yet.
No, it's-
maybe now they do. But anyway, so we walked around and because we weren't even sure if it was sold yet.
Right.
And so we didn't go around the back. We just he looked. It's just so the owners came out.
Oh.
And we were talking about, and one of the things she said, she goes, well, it took some work to get the place to how we wanted it. She said, well, there's a layer of carpet over a layer of linoleum, over a layer of shaved down carpet, over a layer of
Yes.
linoleum.
Shag carpet.
But then we
probably.
got to the real flooring, which had to be completely redone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
shaved down shag carpet.
Yes,
Twice
exactly.
over.
Oh man, Maynard he was a pack rat.
Right.
In his house, they had everything. There was stuff all over his room where he'd keep his horns. He had all his horns out. And they were just laying on him stuff and on stands and stuff. And he would just run through, and he'd always he just had his swim trunks on most of the time when he was at home, and some sandals or something. And he'd just there, and he'd just be sitting, he'd watch TV, turn the sound up and just play, watch TV.
Jump in the pool and play
Jump in the
too.
pool,
Yeah,
play,
underwater.
take a break, right, and come back out. It was it was just like you said. That's why we all loved him, because he was a real person. He didn't have a fake persona, and particularly to
Right.
the
He was
people
always
that.
Maynard.
Yeah, he was always him.
It seemed like everything was a toy to him.
Yeah.
But in the
Well, he
best
said that.
possible way. Yeah,
Every
yeah.
clinic I ever did with him, he said, "This is my favorite toy. It's been my favorite toy since I was 5 years old, whenever he started," and he said, "Still is."
One of our friends, Dennis de Blasio, put it really well, though, because there was another layer. He said that Maynard worked really hard at his happiness.
Yeah.
And so, it was intentional. It was
Yeah,
a
oh,
thing
yeah.
that he was very intentional about.
I mean, he's
And
had his traumas in his life.
big time,
But-
huge traumas.
I remember even one time we were at Ronnie Scott's, and we had to set up, so they were a little bit running late. So Maynard walked around. You remember how Ronnie's are? The pictures were at chest level, so you're sitting there at eye level, right?
Right, right.
So he's looking at all the pictures, and I happened to walk in right when he was walking in. He goes, he does, like almost like airport Maynard.
Right.
And he goes, these are all my buddies, and they're all dead. And like I felt like a dark cloud go
Yeah.
whoop, over the top and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was dark for about 4 minutes. Then it went boop, and the clouds went away, and the sun came back out.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing. It's like he let himself feel that way, then it went away. I mean, he didn't
Well,
roll
he
in
did
it.
that a lot, as you know.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah,
had
we know
his
he's
son
had
pass
some
away and some pretty
tragedy.
dramatic stuff. Yeah, a lot of tragedy.
And he
in his
would
life.
work his way through it and
Yeah.
always end up positive and
Back-
supportive.
yeah.
And back into what can I do for you guys?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
You learn that rubs off on you,
Yeah.
and you learn and conduct yourself that way afterwards. So
I
it's a
think he
gift.
learned-
He's a legacy. That
It
was
was
Well, I think
amazing.
he
It was
learned a
like
lot
5
of-
minutes. It was
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
I think he learned a lot, like I said, seeing the Duke Ellingtons and all these bands he opened for when he was a kid too, and Artie Shaw and all these people, because he saw some, like you say, some pretty dark stuff. But they were always super positive. They were always looking forward. They were not about the past. They were about looking forward, writing new music, doing new things, whatever the new thing was. Maine was
Right,
always
right.
about that.
He was wanting to always move
whatever
forward.
was out and new, he wanted to be in it.
And to be part of that experience leads to this table. It
Yeah.
leads to, like I often say, everything that I have except my nuclear family that I was born into. Everything else is because I was with Maynard Ferguson, everybody I've met, all the people I get to be. So the legacy is constant. And sometimes, this is really cool, I'll borrow a line from Bobby Lamb of Chicago, who wrote this, and I'll paraphrase it, but I'll have a dream. And we all dream about the times of being on the road. And I'm on a bus, and there's various people around, and I look, and here's Maynard. And I'll look at him, and then I'll enjoy time with the guys, and I'll look at Maynard in the dream, and I'll say, "Hey, I'm thinking you're dead." I'm looking, and he always goes, "Yeah, right." And he winks.
always with the wink, right?
Right, and the Bobby Lamb thing is that it always feels contemporary. He's in the dreams, but it feels like now. He's just always with us.
Yeah, right. I'm a believer of life never ends. The energy just goes somewhere else, and I know he is that. His energy is all out there somewhere.
It's the ultimate toy he's found
the
now.
ultimate
Well, yeah.
toy. Right.
Well, it's carried along by other people.
Yeah,
That's true. Yeah.
he was quite something. Yeah.
Before we finish our interview, since we're at Mineral Area College, we're doing a big band camp. So education is important to all of us, performance and teaching students, especially the next generation. So Maynard, to me, was a big part of education. So if we can briefly talk, you three guys, about how 3 areas, education for you guys, and Maynard wasn't he known for always getting a lot of young guys in the band, so that's one thing.
Sure.
And like me back in Iowa, seeing Maynard giving like clinics to a lot of high schools and colleges, stuff like that. So if you guys can briefly talk about why he was so important for education.
I can give one quick example that is a true story. It seems like I'm making it up, but it's not. It was a thing that Maynard would do. All of us can then talk about how we've taken what he did into our own areas of education and passing it on. But a thing that actually happened to me, I would watch Maynard. You know how after the shows, anybody who wanted to come and say hello, no matter how long the line was, everybody comes on. And there'd often be, when he was at the height of his fame, there'd be a trumpet player that would come in and say, "I want to be just like you. I just love your playing." And I'm sitting behind him just kind of learning and listening. And he would say things like, "I'm really, really touched, and it's joyful that you think that, and I really appreciate that. But have you ever checked out Wynton Marsalis?" And he would say a name of somebody for them to check. I go, "Oh, okay, I see how it works." So there was one show where I had this big cadenza, this big flashy thing. A little kid comes up to me afterwards, and this is a true story. And he says, "Oh, man, I loved your playing. I want to be just like you." And I learned from Maynard. I said, "Oh, thanks. That's joyous. I appreciate that."
Marvin the Martian and Sammy Davis.
Marvin the Martian and Sammy
Davis mixed together.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
babe.
babe. Yeah.
And so he said that, and then I said, "But have you ever checked out Curtis Fuller?" I said, "Check out Curtis Fuller." And that little kid, ladies and gentlemen, was Steve Davis.
Oh, that was DVD.
It was Stevie
Oh, I
D.
played
And
with Stevie
now
D.
he sounds
Yeah.
he sounds like Curtis.
Yeah,
He
sounds
went
like
out and
Curtis.
checked out Curtis and became this great, not just because of that, but who knows?
Wow.
But he told me that story
I'm
recently.
going to tell him that you
Steve
did an
Davis.
impression of him that sounded like Marvin the Martian. I see Stevie D, we call him. We
Yeah.
play on the Dizzy Gillespie, so I'll see him in a few weeks.
It was interesting. Yeah, he said, "You're obstructing my view of Earth."
Yes.
I'm going to blow up Venus.
Venus, yes.
Oh man, I don't know. Well,
You're blocking my view of train.
yeah, right. Oh.
You know, it's funny. It's similar kind of thing is that it was more about his positivity and that when guys would get kind of down on themselves and stuff, and you miss a note, you miss more notes. Maynard's whole thing was, just keep playing, don't worry about it.
Right.
Because I got to tell you, now we can hear concerts that we went to when we were kids because people taped them, and now you can go online and hear them. I don't remember them. There's spots where it was like a little out of tune or a little sloppy here. I don't remember any of that when I went to the concert. I remember the overall feel of it was just so exciting, and we learned something from that is that the little glips are people don't really remember those things. Well, now because everything's under the microscope, and they're filming you like getting ready to go to the bathroom in the morning. But the concert itself, my memory of those, it was just super exciting. The little glips that didn't matter because the overall, and that's what I remember from him is that don't get so bogged down with a little occasional hit or that because it won't matter. In the sum total of it, it won't matter. And so I remember him always talking about that.
Yep.
I mean, for me, educationally, why? Because Dave was asking about how it brings in an education. Well, I agree. I think Maynard was a conduit to get young people into music, and I think he learned that from one of his mentors, Stan Kenton. Stan did the same thing. He was really the originator of all these band camps and all this stuff. Yeah. They were called the National Stage Band Camps. He started all that. And Stan was one of the first big band leaders that came out of the late 40s and early 50s that flipped the crowd. He no longer went out and played for the older people, the people his age. He played for the younger people. And he started doing concerts at colleges. They went from playing proms and dances and things like that to college concerts and all that. And he made a whole thing of it. And Maynard was on his band at that time when he first came out of Canada. And he remembered that. And that's why, to me, educationally, he saw the way to perpetuate that because Stan was able to have a much longer career with his band. All these other bands pretty much died away. You know, there were a lot of them. There was only 2 or 3, Buddy Rich, maybe Woody Herman, Stan, that was about it. And there had been hundreds of them. And they all went away. I went to smaller groups, too expensive, blah, blah, blah. And Stan created his own audience for the future by doing that. It was a really smart move on his part. And we used to talk about, I learned a lot from Stan, you know, and I was just like, oh yeah, you're doing exactly the same thing. And he did. But the good side, the upside was he was able to perpetuate a career through that with the younger people, but also bring a lot of people to the music, like you said, to check out somebody else. And he was great about checking out everybody. You know, he really wanted people to do that, and the young people. He was the best of all the band leaders I ever worked for. He was by far the best at clinics because he could reach out to the youngest person in the room and the oldest person. He went across all those boundaries, you know, that maybe other people couldn't get across. And he was really great about that. He could reach out to them, not only with what he said, but with how he played, his whole demeanor on the bandstand, just being around them. And I always, like I said, we talked about it before, I just love that line, "This is my favorite toy." That was the one to me that, like you say, he worked really hard at his happiness. That was the most serious I'd ever seen him. "This is still my favorite toy," and he would just look at his trumpet, and his eyes would just light up. And it was just like, even though he told me, when I was 5 years old, I studied with Buddy Baker in New York. I came home and I played bad, and I threw my horn against the wall. I must have done that 10 times. And been mad. He went through all those hard trials and tribulations that a lot of us go through, and the frustration of trying to do this. But he stuck with it.
Well, he paid the hard dues to have fun. Like
he paid the hard dues to have fun, and that's
Yeah.
really it, right?
Well, I think the word choice is key too, because that's kind of, it grounds you in that. Take it seriously, but at the end of the day, don't take it seriously.
Oh man,
if it's not fun and rewarding,
I tell my students to this day, the best part of my day is anytime I have my horn out, And before I put it away, I always do something. I did it today. I always do something. If I just I'm gonna play a little something to just make myself, because I still love it. To remind me of how much I love this thing, and then I'll put it away.
Well, it
I
reminds
never
me-
put it away when I'm PO'd about it.
See, that's the difference between your trumpet player. You just love putting it away.
I just want to put it away.
It's just a summer kind of thing.
Wow.
Okay.
It reminds me of take a professional athlete when
Yeah.
they're struggling and they're like, you know what?
Yeah.
It's a game.
Yeah.
I'm kicking a ball. I'm hitting a
right.
ball. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's what I love. It's what I'm good at. But I have to remember.
A very good analogy, because you can get in your own mind space and goof it up just like an athlete can.
very much
It's
so.
a mental game for sure.
I did want to ask, this is a little bit off topic, and you had mentioned playing like proms and different things like that. To borrow something from the Blues Brothers, it sounds like you guys kind of had your act together, but did you ever show up to a gig and you're like, what are we doing in this place?
I've got a good one. I've got a
chicken
real
wire
good
and
one.
stuff.
This is
Yeah.
like almost like the Spinal Tap. It's pretty close. So we get hired we show up at this place, and it's obviously dance. They had like circle tables, and people are just sitting around, and they wanted to dance, and it was a dance. And the booking agent, I won't say who it was at the time, but had booked us in there, and obviously they had booked us and not really told these people what they were going to get. And so we come out, and Maynard has a theme song, Bluebird Land, and we play the theme, and it's the blues, but Maynard comes out at
He
the end
barrels
and
into
cranks it. And then the first tune was a tune at that time that a friend of ours, Glenn Coster, who wrote a real fun chart called Get It To Go. And it's just like, bam, hits, and the band is screaming, and Maynard plays his solo, and I come out, and we're all just burning away. And I'll never forget looking out there. It's just like Spinal Tap. The people were just like,
Back to the
like
Future
this.
as well.
Oh, they had
Yeah.
no
Yes, like
clue.
that. Right.
Like,
Oh, I love
what is
it.
this?
What is
and
happening?
So we finished the first tune, and Maynard sees it too. Maynard sees it too, and he's like, he just puts his horn on, and he's smiling, he's almost laughing, and he turns to me, and he goes, "You got it!" And he
Yeah.
took off, and I just came up
Oh,
and we
jeez.
started playing like dance, just a tune they could dance to or something.
Yeah.
We did that the whole first set.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
How about
I'll
There's
never
one-
forget that. As
There's
long
one
as I
phrase that most Maynard guys know is "You got it."
You got it.
Yep.
For whatever.
Yep.
I have to
And he
say,
wasn't mad, at them or the band. It was just
Yeah.
like it was the booking agent. That's what he was
Bob's
like,
Country
That's
Bunker.
fun.
Yeah.
That's
to
it.
your
That's
point,
a true story.
To your point, and to the other point, one of the things I didn't say is that students will do a clinic or something. Students say, "How do you keep from getting nervous?"
Yeah.
And I said one thing I learned from Maynard, really learned from Maynard, was if you play the same way at JoJo State or Bumba High School or Carnegie Hall, you don't get nervous because you're going to play the same. You don't try to play better because you're at Carnegie Hall. You just play
Right.
the same. And so my wife would say, "You're going to get nervous on X, Y, or Z." It's like, I'm going to play the same way I played yesterday at such
Right.
and such. So no.
That's great.
It reminds me of that talk you and I had about a certain saxophone player who sat in with at our big band camp. There's this amazing, I'm not going to say who it is, but great saxophone player. He's only a sophomore in high school. But I've heard him play before, and I'm like blown away at his level. And then he played with the faculty band yesterday. It was good. So I think it's the same thing. I think we should talk with these kids about that point you just brought.
We did today. I already talked to
Oh,
him.
did you?
I mean, I can bring it up
Good.
this week because it really helped, and it's helped people who I've talked to because it's the same thing. It's like we talk about musical intent. If you play with the same intent, like even today, it was like it was fun. Even though I was kind of praying I didn't completely fold, it was fun trying to remember how to play Groovin' Hard because I've not played Groovin' Hard since college.
We probably did it. That was probably the last time
That's
both
probably,
of us
but,
played.
but it's in my head from
Yeah.
hearing it. Yeah, the Keep the Customer Satisfied record. That's one of my favorite records.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I know the record, but I've not heard it. So it's kind of weird how it morphs into your brain. You've heard it enough that I kind of could.
Get back on the bicycle.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. So it's like, but then I looked at the music. I don't really know these notes. But then you just turn that off.
Yep.
And you know most of the notes. So that's
Well,
why I was
yeah,
laughing.
yeah.
Can I get credit for not having any music on that last page?
You didn't have the third page and played it by memory.
Yeah.
I saw some of that too, and it was always a good teaching moment for the band that Maynard could do. The band that I was on, everybody was very young. We were in our 20s, a pretty young band. And so we hadn't learned a lot of these things yet. And an example of that, sometimes we'd be playing for 10,000 screaming people at a big jazz festival, and sometimes it would be more of an intimate club. And we are sometimes stretched really thin on tour, is 2 or 3, the same, then one, another gig. And we ended up at this club with about 4 people in the audience. And us young kids were like, well, how dare we do this? Don't they know who we are, man? You know, and we're not going to, and we're playing not to our best abilities. And Maynard came out and killed it. And we were like, oh, I see. And then
Because
he
I remember
told us.
hearing you at Weatherford, Texas.
Yeah.
Weatherford, nothing against Weatherford, Texas, but
Right.
you know, it's not Chicago.
Right.
And so, and that's I knew that you knew that because you
Yep.
played like it was at the Hollywood Bowl.
Well, yeah, you have to. And I
was like-
learned that from Maynard because he gave us a little pep talk that night. Says, yeah, there was 2 or 3 people, but, you know, those were really not 2 or 3 people. They were 10,000, and it was the best place you've ever played, and that's how you play.
Yeah.
And what a great thing to
That's
learn.
great.
Bring
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Bring
that
it.
was a big one for
And
me.
again, he was a real, he'd spent time on other people's bands before he became, not as a boy band leader, but from that time on, he played with other people. And he saw all of that. I kind of learned that on Woody's band because we played a lot of dances where there was,
Yeah.
Woody didn't want to be there or whatever. But we got out there and played the best we could,
Always.
And that's
Yep.
just, it doesn't matter whether it's 2 or 10,000, you get out there and do your thing. And it speaks to Frank's
Well,
point.
the trade-off is that you don't get nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Well,
just
isn't
don't-
that true?
You
Yeah.
just play.
And it's also exciting. It's
Yeah.
great fun.
Yeah.
You just hit that switch, go out there and play the best you've ever played.
Yeah, you
every
almost
single
don't
game.
even think the audience is there. I mean, that's almost like not even part of the equation in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's like, especially when they turn the lights off, you can't see the audience. It's even better because
yeah.
you just, and they turn the lights on and 4 people are there. It's like, doesn't matter.
Right, yeah.
The concert's over. But yeah,
It was always
it was
somebody to
important.
play
I think
for.
a lot of people have benefited from that.
Yes, I sure did.
Yeah, he never changed. Definitely, Maynard never played. I never heard him play differently.
Yep.
As far as playing for everybody, because he came back. That one story I was telling, he did take off for a while, but then we came back and played the second. We just played. When he was out there playing with us, we did the normal stuff, and he played his butt off. Just like he
Yep.
always did. Even when he didn't feel good. That's the other thing too. That's always the mark of a great musician to me. Somebody that really has done this and knows what they're doing. I was on a lot of nights when Maynard did not feel the best physically or whatever, something was happening, and he was, up in years a little bit, but he still got out there and played his butt off. And like we were talking about that last couple of weeks we did at
Right.
the Luno in New
Yeah.
York, that was like, yep, this is a soldier. This is a
That was
real soldier
astounding, really.
of
Yeah.
music and creativity, because he got out there, and regardless of all the stuff he'd had happen or how he felt, he got up there and played. And that's what you have to do. That's what the professional part of this is, and that's what we try to pass on to the students in a way.
Yep.
You got to get out there regardless of how you feel.
Were you on the band when Maynard had his teeth adjusted?
Yeah.
Oh, I
Remember
heard
that
about
story?
one,
And
yeah.
Yeah.
Was that Fort Wayne as well, maybe too?
I don't remember
Like,
that.
I remember
remember
things like that. But Maynard, his orthodontist thought Maynard would look better with his teeth straight versus the angle they had. But the angle is what he used to pivot on.
Yeah.
And so he made him straight. And so Maynard was struggling that day, first day coming back. And I remember thinking, that's it, this is over. Because
Yeah.
he can't play. So there was no time. He didn't want to get numbed out because he had to play the next night. So I guess he did a little bit of meditation.
Yeah.
He did a few Don Biho, Don't Kill Me O's. And
yes.
he went back with no Novocaine, and they adjusted his teeth back at angle. And he played that night, and he sounded like he was 27 years old. It was pretty unbelievable.
Oof.
He's like,
That's
and no
amazing.
Novocaine. Boss him over here, huh? But yeah, it was pretty amazing. I mean, I joke, but seriously, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That's
He's
how you learn.
one of those guys that come along maybe every 100, 150
Right.
years, Is definitely a unique individual.
Yeah,
It just,
the blend of, like you say, joy, happiness,
Yeah.
but toughness,
Yep.
strength in the face of adversity. He had all that in one package. And if you knew him a little bit, it was like, wow, this is great.
he could be like your
Yeah.
friend, your uncle,
Yeah.
your father. He was
Yeah.
like a father figure to me in many ways, and a brother at the same time.
Yeah, right.
It's great. Whatever you needed.
So here's what I would like to do. I would like to invite you guys next year if you want to come sit down, because I feel like this could be a 10-hour PBS documentary.
Easy.
Yeah,
Easy.
And I
there's
love
a lot
it.
to talk about.
Yeah.
But to wrap things up, I did want to quickly touch on again the idea that you'll hopefully be back next year, because
Oh, yeah.
it'll be the third
Same-
installment.
same-
up to
of
Dave.
Same.
Yeah.
It'll be the same third week of June. That's,
Third week of
yeah,
June.
we've already been talking about it. yeah.
2026, Dave Dickey Big Band Camp. And we did mention that there are kids from out of state. We do have residence options, so you're not, don't feel like you can't come if you live too far away. They have evening activities. I know I'm standing in the way of your Mexican dinner, so.
No. I just want to give a gratuitous plug to Dave. I've known Dave as a student. I've known him as a long time. He's a wonderful guy. He's a really fine musician. He's doing a great service, by doing this and starting this camp. And we were all happy to be a part of it. Steve and I last year, and Frank this year. I know we want to see it keep going because this is organic. It's
a good word
teaching
for
the
it.
kids to be organic, and instead of
Yeah.
and 500 hours a day, they're actually able to feel what this music is. And in the end, at the end of the line, you don't remember that.
Yeah.
You're going to remember how it felt. Oh man, I played that solo or this
Right,
or whatever.
right.
That's what we're here however many years now. It's been almost 20 years since Maynard's gone.
Right, yeah.
And we remember it like it was yesterday, most of it.
Well,
and
and
the organic part of it.
I have to
Right.
imagine too, if you're a student, that playing with people that you're unfamiliar with has got to be a great experience because you're kind of
It influenced
vibing
every
off
one
of
of
them,
us.
and everybody's trying to work
The
together.
music operates that way. It's almost like ESP. I mean, you're really thinking on another level. It's very democratic. Everybody has to contribute, and you don't get that on a phone by yourself. This is very, very different.
Something that I love about the group that I put together for this camp, I just spoke to Andy Martin about this great trombone player from Los Angeles by name Andy Martin, who's also at our camp. And I was so happy because I know Chip and Steve for a long time really well. First time I worked with Frank. So Frank and Andy, the thing I love not only their level of musicianship is they're good with kids. That was super important to me. Andy today was working with very, very beginner trombone students. They were like 7th grade, 8th grade kids playing the easiest charts. Like we call them sectionals when it's just a trombone section working outside of rehearsal time. And I was watching Andy talk to those kids and making them feel like really important, and they're like, oh my God, this is a guy he's in all these over 400 Hollywood movies, and he's the trombone solo on the Disney Pixar Soul.
He played a young
Monsters,
person on
Inc.
that movie.
Right.
He did.
Yeah. That's another story he's going to share. We're going to do that tomorrow, where he's going to give a clinic talking about his recording session for that Monsters Inc. recording session. How they told him to play it down like the girl because she's a middle school trombonist.
Yeah.
But it makes me so happy seeing kids who are very beginner, like Kevin Genino, this great drum teacher we have. There's a kid who's never played jazz drums before. A little bit of, he's playing in a middle school band. So we have middle school kids, we have high school kids, we have college kids. We have a kid all the way from Manhattan School of Music. And we have some trombones at this camp who are high level, like some of the best high school kids I've ever heard. So it's like to have these guys, all the faculty, including the people we had last summer too, know how to talk to a kid who's in 7th and 8th grade, know how to talk to an average high school kid, know how to talk to these kids who are in this Monterey Next Generation or Missouri All-State, Illinois All-State, and or this college student, and know how to talk to them at different levels and to make them better during this week and give them things to improve on before school starts again in the fall. So that's another reason why I like this camp, and stuff I've learned from Jim Weiner, which he learned from the Kenton camps, and it just makes me feel good seeing kids continuing this,
Yeah.
Doing a great job, man.
Yeah,
It's,
for sure.
It's happening.
I can't thank you guys enough for coming in. Again, open invite.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Brandon.
Chat. This is a busy week, but hopefully by next week, at least the audio will be available. I know Dave was talking about putting together some audio with some videos.
I'm
some
excited
clips.
putting this final video together. All this stuff, great questions you asked, and great information, and adding photos and videos, and it's
Can
gonna
I
be
have my sign?
Yeah.
For later in life.
You
I
can
might need it tomorrow.
keep it in a storage bin behind your house.
Tape
it on my
Walk around with it in front of you, so remember who you are as we get older.
Just put it
I'll
on
tape it this
put it on
way.
your top of your trumpet.
Do you know who I am?
Put it
Yeah, I'm this guy. Yeah.
So if you are unfamiliar with Mineral Area College, we do talk to teachers and coaches and athletes and the kids in the theater and all sorts of stuff. So maybe if you're trying to fall asleep at night, you can give us a listen on our other
Absolutely.
episodes. But
Wherever you get your podcasts.
That's right.
it's been a real treat having you guys in here. And not knowing Maynard Ferguson personally, I really, kind of feel like he's in our extra chair.
That's
I bet
It's
he
been
is.
great.
I'm sure. I'm sure he
Yeah.
is.
You'd know.
Having a good time.
Yep.
And no. Wow, you guys. And time to eat.
Yeah, let's go eat.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, we've got today's Wednesday evening, so tomorrow, and then Friday evening is always the sort of big performance, the culmination. This won't be out before then, but for those of you who are thinking about coming next year, that's kind of the way the schedule works. Full week of working with some of the best in the business, and then big performances the last Friday afternoon. So
Yeah, we always do
looking forward to
Friday at
that.
3 o'clock, and it's a great way to showcase not only these guys, but most importantly, showcase the kids. Because
Yeah.
it's hard to get together for 5 days to put together challenging music, So and with all new kids, too, a different band.
Sure.
Yeah, and you can always go to mafinearts.org. That they're going to have all of the camps for not only big band, but your theater and other music. So they'll have the dates for next year, or you can go to mineralarea.edu and then get to the Fine Arts Academy through there. So that information is available. I won't give out anybody's private phone, but yeah, that information's
I've
findable.
got Frank's number.
Yeah, right.
I'll put on the video when I edit
yeah,
it.
Just
put
scrolling
the-
across the
And their
bottom.
home address and their social security number, too.
Is this still 0001111?
There it is.
To add the Mineral
Empire.
Area Fine Arts Academy, I want to congratulate Amanda and Austin Sykes and Dr. Kevin White and somebody who's off to the side, but he's such an important person in his community is Bob Monks, who's given a lot of money and a lot of work to when the music program kind of was dying for a while. Bob and Amanda put together the Fine Arts Academy to bring it back, and now the college is like realizing not just from this camp, but all the stuff that Amanda's doing. They're like, wow, this is like really happening again. So now they're bringing it back to the college. So this area is very blessed to have this college here and have people like Amanda and Kevin and Austin, all these people, and Bob Monks, Kurt Bauke, all these people. It's a hip scene down here. It's different, compared to St. Louis or New York or whatever, Champaign, Chicago. But I love coming down here because the community, like when we perform Friday, which these guys remember from last year, it's a packed house, and they really appreciate live music. The kids in the high schools in this area, Farmington, North County, you get football players and cheerleaders and the jazz band and stuff. It's different down here, so it's kind of refreshing. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, we're going to call it a day. Thanks again, and best of luck these next 2 days, and safe travels home. And,
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon.
Look
Yeah.
forward to talking to you guys next year.
We'll do it.
All right.
Fun.
All righty.
Take care.
Appreciate it.